The blue flames from the burning city lit up the night sky on Cathari Prime. Elder scientist Zenthka pressed his six-fingered hands against the transmitter controls as explosions shook the underground facility. The Vex Empire had finally come for his people, and they were losing badly. Above ground, the screams of his people mixed with the roar of Vex war machines. The peaceful Cathari had never been fighters. They built beautiful cities and studied the stars. They wrote poetry and grew crystal gardens. They had never hurt anyone. But the Vex did not care about peace. Zenthka's assistant Velna ran into the room, her silver skin covered in dust and fear in her large black eyes. Elder, the northern districts have fallen. The Vex are moving toward the capital. How long do we have? Zenthka asked, his fingers dancing over the ancient transmitter. Maybe 6 hours, maybe less. The old scientist nodded and turned back to his work. This transmitter was their last hope. It was older than any living Cathari, built by their ancestors when they first reached for the stars. It could send messages across the entire galaxy, but it had not been used in over 1,000 years. Are you sure this will work? Velna whispered. It has to work, Zenthka replied. The Galactic Council species are too afraid to help us fight the Vex. But maybe someone else will hear our call. Someone brave enough to stand against the darkness. The transmitter hummed to life, its crystal core glowing with ancient power. Zenthka began recording his message, speaking in the common galactic language that most species could understand. This is Elder Zenthka of the Cathari Republic. Our world is dying. The Vex Empire attacks us with no mercy. We are a peaceful people. We have never raised weapons against anyone, but the Vex do not care. They kill our children and burn our cities. If anyone can hear this message, please help us. We have little time left. He paused as another explosion shook the building. Dust fell from the ceiling. We know the galaxy fears the Vex. We know other species think they are too strong to fight, but we must try. Our coordinates follow this message. If you have the courage to stand with us, we will remember your kindness forever. If not, remember us as a people who loved peace and asked only to live among the stars. Zenthka sent the message out into space, using every frequency the old transmitter could reach. The signal raced through the darkness between stars carried by quantum waves that moved faster than light itself. Far across the galaxy, the message reached the homeworlds of dozens of species. The proud Altarians received it first, their crystal cities gleaming under twin suns. The military leaders read the message and shook their heads. The Vex were too dangerous. They had ships that could crack planets and warriors who felt no fear. The message reached the Theron Empire next, where the four-armed generals sat in their war rooms. They had fought the Vex before and barely survived. They would not risk their fleets for strangers. One by one, every species in the known galaxy read the desperate call from Cathari Prime. One by one, they all said no. The Vex Empire was too strong, too cruel, too willing to destroy entire worlds to make a point. Better to let the Cathari die than risk bringing Vex attention to their own people. But the message did not stop at the edge of known space. It kept traveling, pushed by the ancient power of the Cathari transmitter. It raced through dark regions where no galactic species dared to go, through empty space between the spiral arms of the galaxy. Finally, after crossing impossible distances, the signal reached a small blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. The planet's name was Earth, though the galaxy did not know it existed. Captain Jake Morrison was drinking coffee in the command center of Colorado Base when the computers started making noise. The big screens lit up with data from the deep space, listening posts, the secret satellites that Earth had been sending out to watch for threats from the stars. "Captain, we're getting something weird," said Sergeant Amy Foster, the night shift communications officer. "It's coming from way outside the solar system." Morrison set down his coffee and walked over to her station. "What kind of something?" "Looks like a distress signal, but it's not human. The language is completely unknown and the transmission method is unlike anything we've seen." Morrison stared at the scrolling data on Amy's screen. Earth had been listening to space for decades, hoping to find other intelligent life. They had found radio signals from distant civilizations before, but never anything directed at them. Can we understand any of it? Amy nodded. The computer is working on translation. There are mathematical references and star charts included. Whoever sent this wanted to be understood. 20 minutes later, the translation appeared on Morrison's screen. He read it twice, his face getting more serious with each word.
"Get me Admiral Lisa Grant on the secure line," he said quietly. "Sir, it's 3 a.m. Wake her up." 30 minutes later, Admiral Grant stood in the command center reading the alien message. She was a tough woman who had spent her
life preparing Earth for threats from space, but this was different from anything they had planned for. "How do we know this is real?" she asked. Morrison pointed to the star charts. "The astronomical data checks out. This is coming from a real star system about 800 light-years from here. Someone out there is dying and they're asking for help. The president needs to know about this immediately." President Betty Walsh arrived at Colorado Base just as the sun was rising. She read the message 3 times while her security team secured the building. "So we're not alone," she said finally. "No, ma'am," Morrison replied. "And apparently we're being asked to join a war." The president looked out the window at the mountains surrounding the base. "Somewhere out there, beyond Earth's blue sky, people were dying while their planet burned." "What are our options?" she asked. Admiral Grant stepped forward. "We have 3 ships capable of interstellar travel. The experimental fusion drives could get us there in about 8 months, but we'd be going in blind with no idea what we're really facing." "How many people could we take?" 15,000 personnel across all 3 ships. Marines, pilots, support staff. It would be the largest military operation in human history. President Walsh was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the decision that could change everything for humanity. "Ma'am," Morrison said softly, "if we don't go, these people die. If we do go, we might all die. But we'll die knowing we tried to do the right thing." The president nodded slowly. "Prep the ships, Captain. We're going to answer that call." The 3 human ships moved through the dark space between stars like silent hunters. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Liberty, watching the stars shift as they traveled faster than light itself. They had been flying for 6 months now, and Earth was far behind them. "Captain, we're picking up some strange transmissions," said Lieutenant Kate Murphy from her station at the communications console. "Multiple species are talking about something that has them scared." Morrison walked over and looked at the translated messages appearing on her screen. The words made him frown. What exactly are they saying? Kate pointed to the first message. "This one is from something called the Galactic Council. They're asking all member species to report any contact with Vex Empire forces. But here's the weird part. Nobody is answering." "What do you mean nobody is answering?" "I mean the Vex have gone completely silent, no communications, no movement reports, nothing. It's like they just disappeared." Morrison called Admiral Lisa Grant, who was commanding the 2nd ship in their small fleet. Her face appeared on the main screen looking worried. "Jake, are you seeing these reports?" she asked. "Just got them. What do you think it means?" "I think something very bad happened to the Vex Empire, and now everyone is trying to figure out what." Dr. Amy Foster, who had become their expert on alien languages during the long journey, was working at another station. She looked up from her computer with a troubled expression. "Captain, I've been studying these transmissions for hours. The aliens are not just confused about the Vex disappearing. They're terrified." "Terrified of what?" Amy pulled up more translated messages on the big screen. "Look at these reports. Entire Vex battle fleets found drifting in space with no crew aboard. Their weapons removed, their computers wiped clean. Ships that should have thousands of warriors on them, completely empty." Morrison, read the reports with growing concern. The Vex Empire was supposed to be the most dangerous military force in the galaxy. They had been conquering worlds for centuries. What could make an entire empire just vanish? "There's more," Amy continued. "I found some old files in their historical databases. Every species in the galaxy has legends about something they call the Dark Hunters from beyond the Rim. Stories about creatures that live in the empty space between galaxies." "What kind of stories?" the kind that make entire civilizations build walls around their space and post guards at every border. According to these legends, the Dark Hunters turn predators into prey. They take the strongest warriors and make them disappear without a trace. Security Chief Ryan Scott, who had been listening quietly, spoke up from his station. "Captain, I think we have a problem." "What kind of problem?" Ryan put a new set of messages on the screen. "These are private communications between alien military commanders. They're not talking about the Vex anymore, they're talking about us." Morrison stared at the translated text. The words were simple but chilling. "Unknown ships moving through Sector 7. 3 vessels of unknown design. No response to standard contact protocols. Recommend immediate withdrawal of all civilian traffic." Another message read, "Vessels match no known galactic designs. Energy signatures suggest advanced weapons systems. All planets in projected path advised to activate defense networks." "They think we're the Dark Hunters," Amy whispered. The bridge fell silent as everyone realized what that meant. The human fleet had been traveling through space for months, moving toward the battle zone where the Cathari were fighting for their lives. But other species had been watching them, tracking their movement and coming to the wrong conclusion. "Sir," Kate called out from her station. "I'm intercepting a priority message from the Altarian Republic to all Galactic Council members." The message appeared on screen in glowing text. Morrison read it aloud. "Emergency session called regarding the approach of unknown vessels toward Cathari system. Intelligence reports suggest connection between vessel movement and disappearance of Vex forces. All military assets ordered to maximum alert status. Civilian populations advised to prepare for possible evacuation." Admiral Grant's voice came through the communication system from her ship. "Jake, they think we destroyed the Vex Empire. But we didn't even know the Vex existed until we got that distress call." "That doesn't matter. Look at the timeline. The Vex started disappearing right around the time we launched from Earth. From their perspective, we showed up and their biggest threat just vanished." Dr. Foster was working frantically at her computer, pulling up more historical files. "Captain, I found something important. These Dark Hunter legends aren't new. They go back thousands of years. Every time a species becomes too aggressive, too violent, they just disappear. And it always happens when ships are seen coming from the direction of Earth's galaxy." Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. "Are you saying humans have been doing this for thousands of years?" "I'm saying the galaxy thinks we have been. Whether it's true or not doesn't matter. They believe it, and they're scared." The communication system activated, and Colonel Pete Sullivan's voice came through from the 3rd ship in their fleet. "All vessels, we're picking up massive fleet movements. It looks like every major species is pulling their ships back to home systems." "They're running from us," Ryan said quietly. Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They had come to help a dying civilization, to answer a call for help from strangers. But somehow, without firing a single shot, they had become the thing that made the entire galaxy hide in fear. "Captain," Kate said, "we're getting reports of communication blackouts spreading across multiple sectors, trade routes shutting down, entire systems going dark." "They're trying to hide from us," Amy added. "The whole galaxy is trying to hide from us." Morrison stood in the center of the bridge, watching the star charts as the human fleet continued toward Cathari Prime. Behind them, the galaxy was falling silent. Ahead of them waited a battle that might determine not just the fate of the Cathari, but humanity's place among the stars. "How long until we reach the Cathari system?" he asked. 43 days, sir." Morrison nodded grimly. "Then we have 43 days to figure out how to save a species without scaring the rest of the galaxy to death." But deep down, he was beginning to wonder if it was already too late for that. The blue and silver planet of Cathari Prime appeared on the main screen, as the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel. Captain Jake Morrison stared at the world below, seeing the dark smoke rising from burning cities and the flashes of weapon fire across the continents. "My God," whispered Dr. Amy Foster. "Look what they've done to that world." Hundreds of Vex warships surrounded the planet like hungry wolves around wounded prey. Their dark hulls gleamed with weapon ports and their engines burned red as they moved in attack formations. The smaller Cathari defense ships looked like toys fighting against giants. Communications. Try to contact the Cathari, Morrison ordered. Lieutenant. Kate Murphy worked at her station for several minutes before shaking her head. The Vex are jamming all frequencies, sir. I can't get through. Then we make them stop jamming. Morrison turned to his weapons officer. Target their communication jammers and take them out. The human ships moved forward with deadly purpose. Their weapons were different from anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of the energy beams that most species used, the humans fired solid metal projectiles that moved at incredible speeds. The Vex jamming stations exploded in brilliant flashes as the kinetic rounds tore through their shields like paper. Within minutes, the communication channels were clear. Morrison opened a channel to the planet below. Cathari Prime, this is Captain Jake Morrison of the Earth Defense Force. We received your distress call. We're here to help. The response came quickly, filled with relief and hope. Captain Morrison, this is Elder Zenthka. Thank the stars you came. We thought no one would answer our call. We're going to get you out of this, Elder. Can you give us information about Vex positions and capabilities? Of course, but Captain, you should know that the Vex have been acting strangely for the past few months. They seem more desperate than usual, more willing to take heavy losses. Morrison frowned. What do you mean? They're fighting like something is chasing them, like they're running from something even worse than themselves. Before Morrison could respond, Colonel Pete Sullivan's voice came through from the UES Defiance. Captain, we've got Vex ships moving to intercept. Looks like they want to fight. All ships, engage the enemy. Remember, we're here to protect the Cathari, not to conquer anyone. The battle began immediately. The Vex ships attacked with the fury of a species that had conquered half the galaxy. Their weapons lit up space with deadly energy beams and plasma torpedoes. But something was wrong. The human ships moved in ways that confused the Vex commanders. They didn't fight like any species the galaxy had ever seen. Instead of the long-range energy duels that were normal for space combat, the humans closed distance, rapidly, and used tactics that seemed impossible. Security Chief Ryan Scott coordinated the electronic warfare from his station. Their computer systems are centuries more advanced than ours, but they're not expecting our approach. I'm getting into their networks. How is that possible? Asked Dr. Foster. They built their systems to defend against other galactic species. They never planned for someone who would use completely different methods. Within an hour, Ryan had hacked into the Vex command network and was reading their internal communications. What he found made his blood run cold. Captain, you need to see this. Morrison read the translated Vex messages with growing understanding. The enemy commanders were not talking about conquering Cathari Prime. They were talking about reaching it before they arrived. Who are they? Morrison asked. Ryan pulled up more files. According to Vex military records, their empire has been in full retreat for over a year. They're not expanding anymore, they're running. Running from what? From something they call the death that comes from dark space. Something that has been hunting them across the galaxy, destroying their fleets and taking their worlds. Dr. Foster looked up from her analysis station with a pale face. Captain, I've been studying the timeline of Vex movements. They've been moving in a straight line away from our region of space for the past 18 months. That's impossible. We only left Earth 8 months ago. No, sir. We only left Earth 8 months ago. But Earth has been sending deep space probes and unmanned scouts in this direction for over 2 years. The Vex have been detecting our automated signals and running from them. The truth hit Morrison like a physical blow. Humanity had not been intentionally hunting the Vex Empire. But their normal exploration activities had been enough to terrify the galaxy's most feared predators into retreat. Sir, Kate called out, I'm getting a transmission from Elder Zenthka. He wants to meet with you personally. Tell him I'll be down in a shuttle within the hour. The meeting took place in the ruins of what had once been a beautiful crystal palace. Elder Zenthka was tall and thin, with silver skin and large dark eyes that seemed to hold ancient wisdom. But those eyes also held fear. Captain Morrison, my people are grateful for your help. But we must ask, are you the ones the galaxy calls the Dark Hunters? Morrison was quiet for a moment. Elder. Until a few hours ago, I had never heard that term. We're just people from a small planet who heard your call for help. But the Vex fear you, the entire galaxy fears you. There are legends about your kind that go back thousands of years. What kind of legends? Xanth gestured to a wall covered in ancient carvings. Stories of beings who live in the spaces between galaxies, who hunt the hunters and make predators into prey, who appear when the strong become too cruel and make them disappear without a trace. Morrison studied the carvings. They showed dark ships emerging from empty space and powerful civilizations simply vanishing. At the center of each carving was a symbol that made his heart race, a blue and green world orbiting a yellow star. Elder, how old are these carvings? Over 10,000 years, Captain. My ancestors created them to remember the first time the Dark Hunters came to our region of space. And what happened then? The Corvin Empire controlled half the galaxy. They were even more brutal than the Vex, enslaving entire species and destroying any world that resisted. Then one day, ships came, from the dark between stars. Within a year, the Corvin Empire was gone. Every ship, every station, every colony, all empty. No bodies, no wreckage, just empty space where a civilization used to be. Morrison felt the weight of realization settling on his shoulders. Humanity was not just new to the galaxy. They were the returning nightmare that every civilization remembered and feared. Captain, Xanth said quietly, my people are grateful for your help. But we must ask, when you are finished here, will you make us disappear too? Captain Jake Morrison stood in the war room aboard the UES Liberty, studying the tactical displays that showed Vex positions around Cathari Prime. The alien empire had thousands of ships in the system, but something about their formation looked strange to his experienced eye. They're not trying to conquer this world, he said to Colonel Pete Sullivan. Look at their positioning. They're using Cathari Prime as a shield. Pete studied the display and nodded. You're right. They've got their backs to the planet and their weapons pointed outward. They're expecting something to come from deep space. They're expecting us, Morrison realized. Or more of us. Admiral Lisa Grant's face appeared on the communication screen, from her ship. Jake, we've intercepted more Vex communications. They're calling for reinforcements from across their entire empire. Every ship they have is being ordered to this system. That doesn't make sense. Why would they bring their entire fleet to fight us? We only have 3 ships. Dr. Amy Foster looked up from her station, where she had been analyzing Vex behavioral patterns. Because they think we're the advance force. They believe a massive human invasion fleet is coming behind us. Morrison felt a chill run down his spine. The Vex were not just fighting to conquer Cathari Prime anymore. They were making their last stand here, believing that humanity was coming to destroy their entire civilization. Sir? Security Chief Ryan Scott called out. I'm reading massive energy buildups from the Vex ships. They're preparing to glass the planet. What? Morrison spun around to face him. If they can't use Cathari Prime as a defensive position, they're going to destroy it completely. Kill everyone on the surface so we can't use the planet as a base. Morrison made his decision instantly. All ships, Operation Silent Night is now active. We end this before they can hurt any more innocent people. The human fleet moved with a precision that terrified both the Vex and the watching Cathari. The 3 Earth ships did not charge forward like heroes in the stories. Instead, they split apart and began hunting the Vex fleet like wolves taking down a herd. Major Chris Parker led the first wave of attacks from his fighter squadron. But these were not normal space fighters. They were small, fast ships that could slip through Vex defenses and attach themselves to enemy hulls. Once attached, human soldiers would cut their way inside and take control of the ship from within. Boarding Party Alpha is inside Vex command ship, Chris reported over the radio. Beginning data extraction. Commander Nicole Brooks coordinated the electronic warfare from the UES Defiance. Her team had been studying Vex computer systems for months during their journey, and now they turned that knowledge into a weapon. I'm inside their fleet communication network, she reported. Shutting down their coordination systems now. Across the Vex fleet, ships suddenly found themselves blind and deaf. Their advanced computers, which had conquered hundreds of worlds, were being turned against them by humans who fought like no species they had ever encountered. The turning point came when Sergeant Danny White's Special Forces team captured a Vex dreadnought intact. The massive ship was the size of a small city, armed with weapons that could crack planets, but Danny's team took it with only 12 soldiers. "How did you do it?" Morrison asked when Danny reported in. "We didn't fight their strengths, sir. We used their weaknesses. Vex warriors are bred for space combat, but they've never had to fight inside their own ships. They don't know how to handle close-quarters battle in zero gravity." Intelligence Officer Helen Price took charge of interrogating the captured Vex commanders. What she learned from them changed everything the humans thought they knew about the war. "Captain, you need to hear this," Helen said over the secure channel. "The Vex commander I questioned says his people have been running from something in dark space for over 300 years. 300 years? But humans only reached space 60 years ago. That's what I told him. But he insists that Vex long-range scouts have been detecting human signals from the direction of Earth for centuries. Radio transmissions, satellite signals, even the electromagnetic signatures from our cities." Morrison sat down heavily in his command chair. "Are you saying the Vex have been afraid of us since before we even knew they existed?" "More than afraid, sir. According to their historical records, every time the Vex expanded too aggressively, they would detect signals from our region of space. Every time they conquered too many worlds or became too cruel to other species, those signals would get stronger. And then what happened? Then their outer colonies would start disappearing. Ships would vanish without a trace. Entire battle fleets would be found drifting empty in space. The Vex leadership began to believe that something was watching them, punishing them when they went too far." Morrison stared out at the battle raging around Cathari Prime. Human ships were systematically dismantling the Vex fleet with an efficiency that seemed impossible. But now he understood why it seemed so easy. They're not fighting to win, he realized. They're fighting because they think they have to. They believe we're going to wipe them out no matter what they do. Helen's voice was quiet when she responded. "Sir, there's something else. The Vex commander asked me a question that I couldn't answer." "What question?" "He wanted to know why we let any of them live. According to Vex records, every other time the Dark Hunters appeared, they left no survivors. Entire civilizations would just vanish. But we're taking prisoners and treating wounded enemies. Maybe that's because we're not the Dark Hunters from their legends. Or maybe, sir, we're just better at it than our ancestors were." The battle for Cathari Prime lasted 6 more hours. When it ended, the Vex fleet was gone. Not destroyed, simply gone. Some ships had been captured, others had surrendered, and the rest had fled into deep space at maximum speed. Morrison stood on the bridge of the Liberty, looking down at the blue and silver world below. The cities were still burning, but the bombing had stopped. The Cathari were safe. But across the galaxy, every species with deep space sensors had watched the battle. They had seen 3 human ships defeat a Vex fleet that outnumbered them 1,000 to 1. They had watched the most feared empire in the galaxy run away in terror, and now they all knew that the Dark Hunters had returned to the stars. The celebration on Cathari Prime lasted 3 days. The crystal cities that had not been destroyed were filled with grateful people, thanking the humans who had saved their world. Elder Zenthka presented Captain Jake Morrison with the highest honor his people could give, a crystal pendant that held the light of their dying sun. But Morrison could not enjoy the celebration. He stood in the command center of the UES Liberty, watching the reports that flooded in from across the galaxy. Every species with deep space communications was talking about what had happened at Cathari Prime. "Sir, you need to see this," said Lieutenant Kate Murphy, her face pale as she worked at her station. "The entire galaxy is going dark." Morrison walked over to look at her screens. The communication networks that connected thousands of worlds were shutting down one by one. Trade routes that had operated for centuries were closing. Military fleets were retreating to their home systems at maximum speed. "What are they doing?" Morrison asked. Dr. Amy Foster answered from her position at the science station. "They're hiding from us, Captain. Every single species in the galaxy is trying to become invisible. Admiral Lisa Grant's face appeared on the main screen from her ship. Her expression was grim. "Jake, I just received a priority transmission from the Galactic Council. They want to meet with us." "What kind of meeting?" "The kind where they beg us not to destroy them." Morrison felt the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders like a heavy cloak. He had come to save one small world, and somehow ended up becoming the thing that terrified an entire galaxy. "Put the transmission through." The screen changed to show a vast chamber filled with representatives from dozens of species. At the center stood Ambassador Thylon of the Altarian Republic, his crystal skin reflecting the lights of the council chamber. "Captain Morrison of Earth," Thylon began, his voice formal but shaking slightly. "The Galactic Council requests an audience to discuss the terms of coexistence between humanity and the civilized galaxy." "Terms of coexistence?" Morrison repeated. "Ambassador, we came here to help. We answered a distress call from people who were dying." "Yes, and we are grateful for your assistance to the Cathari. But Captain, your arrival has consequences that extend far beyond one world. The galaxy remembers the last time your people walked among the stars." Morrison glanced at Amy, who had been studying the ancient records they had found on Cathari Prime. She nodded and stepped forward. "Ambassador, our records show that humans left Earth for the first time less than a year ago. We have no memory of being in this galaxy before." Thylon's large eyes studied her for a long moment. "Perhaps your people do not remember, but the galaxy does. We have records going back 10,000 years. Every few centuries, when a species becomes too aggressive, too willing to destroy others for power, ships come from the dark between galaxies. Those ships carry beings that look exactly like you." "And what happens to those aggressive species?" Morrison asked, though he was beginning to suspect the answer. "They disappear. Completely. No battles, no negotiations, no warnings. One day, they control hundreds of worlds, and the next day those worlds are empty. No bodies, no wreckage, just silence." Morrison felt the eyes of every council member staring at him through the screen. These were the leaders of the most advanced civilizations in the galaxy, and they were all terrified of 3 human ships. Security Chief Ryan Scott spoke up from his station. "Captain, I'm monitoring galactic communication networks. The word is spreading fast. Every military force in known space is pulling back to defensive positions around their home worlds. They think we're going to start hunting them," Morrison realized. Elder Zenthka's voice came through a private channel from the planet below. "Captain Morrison, my people would like to offer Earth a place in the Galactic Council. You could represent humanity in our government." Morrison looked around the bridge at his crew. They had left Earth to help strangers, and now those same strangers were offering to make them rulers of the galaxy. But the offer felt more like a desperate attempt to control something they feared. "Elder, I appreciate the offer, but I think the galaxy has made it clear what they really want from us." "What do you mean?" Morrison opened a channel to all frequencies, broadcasting his words across the entire galaxy. His voice was calm and steady as he spoke. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of Earth. We came to this galaxy because we heard a call for help. We answered that call because it was the right thing to do. We have no interest in conquering anyone or ruling anyone. We just want to go home." He paused, looking at the faces of his crew. They were good people who had risked everything to help strangers. "The Cathari are safe now. The Vex Empire has been stopped. Our mission here is complete. Humanity is returning to our own region of space. We suggest that while we're gone, you all learn to play nice with each other." Morrison ended the transmission and turned to his navigation officer. "Set course for Earth. All ships, we're going home." The 3 human ships left Cathari Prime 12 hours later. As they disappeared into the darkness between stars, something unprecedented happened across the galaxy. Every communication network went silent. Not just the military channels or the government frequencies, but everything. Trade negotiations that had been going on for months were abandoned. Diplomatic missions were recalled. Entire star systems activated communication blackouts that had not been used for centuries. The galaxy held its breath and waited. Back on Earth, President Betty Walsh received Morrison's full report in a secured briefing room deep beneath Colorado Base. She read it twice before setting it down and looking at the assembled military leaders. "So the galaxy wants us to stay away from them," she said finally. "Yes, ma'am," Morrison replied. "They're terrified of us. And they think we've been secretly controlling galactic politics for thousands of years." "That's correct." President Walsh was quiet for a long moment, thinking about the implications of first contact going so very wrong. "Captain, in your professional opinion, should we honor their request and stay in our own region of space?" Morrison thought about the grateful Cathari, the terrified Vex, and the silent galaxy that was hiding from humanity. "Ma'am, I think we should give them what they want. But on our terms." "What do you mean?" "We expand into the dark regions beyond the galaxy. We explore the spaces where even the Vex were afraid to go. Let the galaxy have their peace, but let them also remember that we're out there watching." President Walsh nodded slowly. "And if another species decides to become the next Vex Empire?" Morrison's smile was cold and confident. "Then we'll hear about it, and we'll decide whether they've learned to play nice or not." Across the galaxy, civilizations that had warred for millennia suddenly found themselves working together. Ancient enemies signed peace treaties overnight. Aggressive expansion stopped completely. The stars themselves seemed to sing with a harmony that had not existed for thousands of years. And in the dark spaces beyond the galactic rim, human ships began to explore regions that no other species had ever dared to enter, looking for whatever it was that even humanity's reputation could not reach. The galaxy had wanted silence. They got exactly what they asked for.